I answered a phone call from my own number at midnight. And when I heard my own voice telling me not to turn around, I thought it was a prank, some stupid joke. But then I felt warm breath on the back of my neck, and I realized I wasn't alone in my apartment. My name is Sonia Reeves. I'm 28 years old, and I live alone in a 7th-floor apartment in Denver. I work from home as a data analyst. I'm practical. I don't believe in ghosts or anything supernatural. I lock my doors. I check my windows. I thought I was safe, but someone had been living in my apartment for 6 weeks without me knowing. And that night, he finally wanted me to know he was there. Before I tell you what happened next, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. 3 months before that phone call, my life looked completely different. I was in a relationship with a guy named Derek. We'd been together for 2 years. I thought we were building something real. Then one day, he sat me down and told me he didn't love me anymore. Just like that. No warning. No big fight. He just stopped feeling it, and he was done. I moved into my apartment 2 weeks later. It was supposed to be my fresh start. A place that was just mine. 7th floor of a secure building with key fob entry. Nice neighbors. Quiet hallways. I told myself this was exactly what I needed. My older brother Marcus wasn't so sure. He's 34 and works as a police detective. He worries about me constantly, especially after the breakup. He kept asking if I wanted him to stay over for a few nights, help me settle in. I told him I was fine. I wanted to prove I could do this on my own. My mom Diane was even worse. She lives about 40 minutes outside the city, and she called me every single day for the first month. She didn't like the idea of me living alone. She kept saying things like, "Sonia, you don't have to be so independent all the time." But I did. I needed to prove to myself that I could handle my own life. So I threw myself into work. I stayed up late finishing reports. I stopped going out with friends. I told myself I was being productive. But honestly, I was just avoiding the silence. Because when everything got quiet, I started thinking about Derek, about what I did wrong, about why I wasn't enough. The night everything changed started like any other night. It was a Tuesday, just past midnight. I couldn't sleep. My brain wouldn't shut off. So I was sitting on my couch in the dark, scrolling through my phone. The TV was off. The only light came from a small lamp in the corner of the living room. I was wearing my old college sweatshirt and pajama pants. My hair was in a messy bun. I wasn't expecting anyone. I wasn't even fully awake. Earlier that evening, something small had happened. Something I didn't think about at the time. I'd taken the trash out to the chute down the hall, and when I came back, my front door was unlocked. I remembered locking it. I always lock it. But I told myself I must have forgotten. I was tired. I'd been distracted. It wasn't a big deal. I wish I had paid more attention. At 12:07 a.m., my phone lit up with an incoming call. I glanced at the screen, expecting a spam number or maybe a late-night text from my mom. But the caller ID didn't show an unknown number. It showed my number. My own phone number was calling me. I stared at it for a few seconds. I knew about phone spoofing. Scammers do it all the time to trick people into answering. I almost ignored it, almost let it go to voicemail. But something made me curious. I wanted to know who was on the other end. So I answered. And that's when everything I thought I knew about my safe little apartment fell apart. For a few seconds, there was nothing but silence on the other end. I said hello twice, and nobody answered. I was about to hang up when I heard breathing. Slow, steady breathing. Then a voice came through the speaker, and my whole body went cold. It was my voice, not similar to my voice, not someone trying to imitate me. It was exactly my voice, my exact tone, my exact way of speaking. The voice said 2 words, "Don't turn around." I laughed. It came out shaky and nervous, but I laughed because my brain couldn't process what I was hearing. I thought it had to be a joke. Maybe one of my coworkers was messing with me. Maybe someone had found some app that could copy voices. I said, "Who is this?" And I tried to sound annoyed instead of scared. The voice repeated itself. "Don't turn around, Sonia." It used my name, my full name, and it said it the exact way I say it when I'm being serious. I wanted to spin around and prove to myself that nobody was there. I wanted to catch whoever was pranking me and yell at them for scaring me. But something stopped me. Some instinct I didn't even know I had. My body refused to move. I sat completely still on that couch, phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my head. I asked again. I said, "Tell me who this is right now." The voice on the phone said, "You already know." And that's when I felt it. Warm breath on the back of my neck, close. So close that I could feel the heat of it on my skin. Someone was standing directly behind me. Every horror movie I'd ever watched told me to run. Every true crime podcast I'd ever listened to told me to scream. But I couldn't do either. My legs felt like they were filled with cement. My throat closed up so tight I could barely breathe. I just sat there, frozen, while the voice on the phone kept talking. The voice said, "If you turn around, it gets worse." I didn't know what that meant, but I believed it. I believed it completely. So I stayed still. I kept my eyes forward, and I whispered into the phone, asking, "What do you want from me?" The voice said, "I want you to listen." My mind was racing through every possibility. Was this a break-in? How did someone get into my apartment? The building had security. You needed a key fob to get through the front door. You needed another key fob for the elevator. My door had been locked. At least I thought it had been locked. But then I remembered earlier that evening, the door had been unlocked when I came back from taking out the trash. I had ignored it. I had told myself it was nothing. The breathing on my neck continued, steady and calm, like whoever was behind me had all the time in the world. Then I noticed something else. A smell, faint but familiar. Cologne. A specific cologne that I recognized immediately. It was the same cologne Derek used to wear. The same one that used to be on his shirts when I hugged him. My ex-boyfriend's cologne. For a split second, I thought it was Derek. I thought maybe he had lost his mind and broken into my apartment to scare me. But that didn't make sense. Derek was selfish and cold, but he wasn't dangerous. He wasn't capable of something like this. At least I didn't think he was. I tried to keep the voice on the phone talking. I asked, "Why are you doing this to me?" The voice said, "Because you forgot about me." That answer made no sense. I hadn't forgotten about anyone. I didn't know anyone who would do something like this. But whoever was behind me clearly thought I did. They believed I had wronged them somehow. And now they were standing in my apartment in the middle of the night, breathing on my neck, using my own voice to terrorize me. I had never felt so helpless in my entire life. I was in my own home, the place where I was supposed to be safe, and I had never been more afraid. The worst part was not knowing who was behind me, not knowing what they wanted, not knowing what they were going to do next. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit there and wait for whoever was behind me to make their next move. My phone was still pressed to my ear, and the voice on the other end had gone quiet. But the breathing on my neck was still there, steady and patient, like they were waiting to see what I would do. I forced myself to think. I forced my brain to work through the panic and come up with a plan. My brother Marcus is a police detective. He's spent his whole career telling me what to do in dangerous situations. He always said the most important thing is to stay calm and buy yourself time. Don't make sudden movements. Don't escalate the situation. Find a way to get help without alerting the person threatening you. I never thought I would actually need that advice. But right now, it was the only thing keeping me from completely falling apart. I lowered the phone slowly from my ear, keeping my movements small and controlled. I didn't want whoever was behind me to think I was trying to escape. I tilted the screen toward me, just enough to see it, and opened my text messages. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I found Marcus in my contacts and sent him a message. I wrote, "Someone is in my apartment. Call 911. Don't call me." I hit send and prayed he would see it. Marcus usually keeps his phone on loud, even at night. He always says a detective never really sleeps. I needed that to be true right now more than ever. I raised the phone back to my ear and started talking again. I needed to keep the voice engaged. I needed to make whoever was behind me think I was still frozen and scared and not doing anything to fight back. I asked, "Why me? What did I ever do to you?" The voice on the phone was quiet for a moment, and then it said, "You never even noticed me." That answer sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't Derek. This wasn't anyone I knew. This was someone who had been watching me, someone I had apparently crossed paths with without ever realizing it. The breathing on my neck suddenly stopped. I heard footsteps behind me, soft and slow, moving away from the couch, moving toward my bedroom. I didn't turn around to look. I kept my eyes forward and listened as the footsteps got quieter. Whoever it was had moved to another part of the apartment. This was my chance. I looked around the room without moving my head too much. My keys were on the kitchen counter, right next to the front door. If I could get to the door and get out into the hallway, I could run. I could pound on my neighbor's door. I could scream for help. The hallway would have witnesses. The hallway would be safe. But then, the voice on the phone spoke again. It said, "I see you moving." My stomach dropped. They could see me. Somehow, they were watching me even while they walked through my apartment. There had to be a camera somewhere, or maybe they were looking through a window, or maybe they had never actually left the room at all, and the footsteps were a trick to make me think I was alone. I didn't know what was real anymore. I made a decision. I couldn't keep sitting there waiting to see what would happen. Whatever was coming, I would rather face it running than sitting still like a target. I counted to 3 in my head. On 1, I took a breath. On 2, I gripped my phone tighter. On 3, I launched myself off that couch and ran for the front door faster than I have ever run in my life. I didn't look behind me. I didn't stop to grab my keys. I just ran. I reached the door and yanked it open so hard it slammed against the wall. I flew into the hallway and the door swung shut behind me. I was out. I was free. But I wasn't safe yet. I needed to find someone, anyone, who could help me before whoever was in my apartment came after me. I ran down the hallway barefoot, my feet slapping against the cold tile floor. I didn't care about the noise. I didn't care about waking anyone up. I just needed to find someone who could help me. The elevator was at the end of the hall, but I didn't want to wait for it. I didn't want to stand still for even 1 second. Instead, I ran to my neighbor's door, the apartment right next to mine, and I started pounding on it with both fists. I was screaming. I don't even remember what I was saying. I just remember the sound of my own voice echoing through that hallway, desperate and raw and terrified. I kept hitting the door until my hands hurt. Finally, I heard movement on the other side. A lock clicked, and the door opened just a crack. An elderly man peered out at me with wide, confused eyes. His name was Mr. Del Vecchio. I had seen him in the elevator a few times, but we had never really talked. He looked at me like I had lost my mind, and honestly, I probably looked like I had. I told him someone was in my apartment. I begged him to let me in. He didn't ask any questions. He just opened the door wider and pulled me inside. He locked the door behind me, the deadbolt and the chain, and then he asked me what happened. I could barely get the words out. I told him about the phone call, the voice, the breathing on my neck. He listened without interrupting, and then he picked up his phone and called 911 himself. The police arrived in 8 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on Mr. Del Vecchio's wall the entire time. Every second felt like an hour. I kept expecting to hear footsteps in the hallway. I kept expecting whoever was in my apartment to come looking for me. But the hallway stayed quiet until I heard the elevator doors open and heavy boots coming toward us. Marcus arrived at the same time as the other officers. He had gotten my text and called 911 immediately, then drove across the city to get to me. When I saw his face, I finally broke down. I had been holding everything together, running on pure adrenaline, and seeing my brother made it all come crashing down. He held me while the other officers went to search my apartment. What they found inside made everything so much worse. There was a sleeping bag rolled up in the back of my bedroom closet. There were empty food wrappers stuffed under my bed, hidden where I would never think to look. Someone had been living in my apartment with me, not just visiting, living there, sleeping there while I slept in the next room. They also found a laptop hidden behind my couch. The laptop had surveillance software on it that had hacked into my phone. Whoever owned that laptop had access to my microphone and my camera. They had been listening to my calls. They had been watching me through my own phone screen. Every private moment I thought I had was never private at all. The police identified the intruder within hours. His name was Curtis Vance. He was 31 years old, and he lived in the same building as me, 3 floors down. He worked in tech support, which explained how he knew how to hack into my devices and clone my phone number. He had created a voice synthesis program using recordings he had captured from my hacked phone. That's how he made it sound like my own voice was calling me. He had been collecting pieces of me for weeks. The officers told me Curtis had first noticed me in the elevator about 4 months ago. He became obsessed. He started following my routines, learning when I left and when I came home. He figured out how to get into my apartment when I wasn't there. And then he started staying. The cologne I had smelled that night was deliberate. He had found old photos of me and Derek on my phone, and he started wearing the same cologne because he thought it would make me feel something. He had been studying me like I was a project, learning everything about my life so he could become part of it. Curtis Vance was arrested that same night. The police found him hiding in the basement of our building, waiting for things to calm down so he could slip away. He didn't resist when they put him in handcuffs. He didn't say a word. He just stared straight ahead with this blank expression on his face, like he had already accepted that his game was over. Marcus told me later that Curtis had been planning this for months. He had journals filled with notes about me, my schedule, my habits, my favorite foods, the shows I watched at night. He knew everything about my life, and I had never even learned his name until the police told me. The charges against him were serious: stalking, breaking and entering, illegal surveillance, and invasion of privacy. The district attorney said it was one of the most disturbing cases of obsessive behavior she had seen in years. Curtis had no prior criminal record, no history of violence. To everyone who knew him, he seemed like a quiet, normal guy who kept to himself. But behind that quiet exterior was someone who had convinced himself that watching me, studying me, and eventually revealing himself to me was somehow romantic. He thought that phone call was going to be the beginning of something between us. He thought I would be scared at first, but eventually come to understand him. That's what he told the police during his interrogation. He said he just wanted me to finally see him. I couldn't stay in that apartment. I packed a bag that night and went to stay with my mom. Diane didn't say I told you so, even though she had every right to. She just held me and let me cry until I didn't have any tears left. I stayed with her for almost a month while I looked for a new place to live. Every night, I would lie awake in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, replaying that phone call in my head. I kept hearing my own voice telling me not to turn around. I kept feeling that breath on my neck. Some nights, I would wake up in a panic, convinced someone was standing in the corner of the room watching me. Marcus blamed himself for not checking on me more often. He kept saying he should have known something was wrong. He should have pushed harder when I told him I was fine. I told him none of this was his fault. There was no way anyone could have predicted that a stranger in my building would become so obsessed with me that he would move into my apartment without me knowing. This wasn't something you could prepare for. This wasn't something you could prevent just by being more careful. Curtis had made a choice to violate my life, and that choice was entirely on him. I changed everything after that. New phone number, new email address, new passwords for every account I owned. I hired a cybersecurity expert to go through all my devices and make sure there was nothing else compromised. I bought covers for my laptop camera and my phone camera. I installed extra locks on my new apartment door. I became the kind of person who checks every room before going to sleep, who looks over her shoulder when walking to her car, who never fully relaxes even in her own home. But I also did something else. I started sharing my story. I wrote about what happened to me on social media, and the response was overwhelming. Thousands of women reached out to tell me their own experiences with stalkers and obsessive behavior. Some of them had been through things even worse than what I experienced. I realized that this kind of violation happens all the time, and most people never talk about it because they feel ashamed or scared, or like nobody will believe them. So I kept talking. I started a blog dedicated to helping other women recognize the signs of stalking and digital surveillance. I partnered with local organizations that support victims of harassment. I turned the worst experience of my life into something that could actually help other people. It didn't erase what happened to me. It didn't make the nightmares go away, but it gave me a sense of purpose that I desperately needed. The voice on the phone that night was fake. It was technology designed to terrify me and control me. But the real horror was knowing that someone had been watching me for weeks, learning my secrets, existing in my space without my permission. I thought I was safe in my own home. I thought locked doors and security cameras were enough. I was wrong. And if my story can help even one person recognize the signs before it's too late, then at least something good came from the worst night of my life. If something ever feels wrong in your own space, trust that feeling. Don't ignore the unlocked door. Don't dismiss the strange noises. Don't convince yourself you're being paranoid. Because I did all of those things, and someone was standing behind me the entire time. If this story made you think twice about your own safety, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another video. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever felt like someone was watching you? I read every single comment, and your story might help someone else feel less alone.